we're here in Liverpool, obviously. We're in Sefton Park, and this is an absolutely gorgeous street. Look at this. Amazing. So we're going to the Motor Museum. See the sign there? Museum. And I think it's called a motor museum because it used to be a motoring museum. So let's go and check it out. This gorgeous street. How the devil are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good to see you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. What's this street called? We were just talking about
This is Hesketh Street, which is off Lark Lane.
Lark Lane.
Which is a very old and much loved street in Liverpool.
Beautiful.
Come in.
Beautiful. Yeah, what a gorgeous area.
It's fine. It's fab, isn't it? Great weather as well today.
It's lovely. Yeah, this is practically summer here in height of summer in England, isn't it? I've got to say, the first thing you see when you walk in, of course, is this rather lovely display of beautiful albums and singles.
They're all by one man, one band, Andy McCluskey and his band OMD. So Andy used to own the Motor Museum. It was how I met him and how we became friends, and did significant records here, some OMD records and some others. And he's very kindly left me all his trophies to inspire me every morning and to motivate.
For want of a better phrase, he's basically a local hero.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he's from the Wirral, which is what you say, a mile away?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just over the other side of the river. And has been an amazing mentor for me, a very close friend, and a really good supportive person of a lot of my later part of career.
And a man of many talents, of course, because singer, bass player, songwriter of OMD.
Yeah.
Only consistent member. And of course, then he formed Atomic Kitten, which he wrote and produced.
Correct.
And had #1 hits.
Correct. And I don't know if it's well known, but he has quite an extensive publishing catalogue with quite a lot of film work as well. So he's done songs for various quite large Hollywood feature films, and you don't know until you see the credit and you go, there's another one of Andy's and another of Andy's, another one. Great guy.
And I'm never going to get that
for the rest of your visit here,
that melody. Another guy. Wow, this is an absolutely gorgeous thing. I was just saying on camera that this was a motor museum.
It was originally a bus garage. So buses would drive in through the front entrance here, which is why the floor slopes, and they would be repaired. And under all these rugs are the old pits that the mechanics used to go under. And that's why the building is so tall. And then at some point it ceased to be that. It was turned into a vintage car museum in the mid-80s. And it had the first Ferrari to be imported into the UK, I believe, and various other kind of, trophies of vehicle history. And then in 1988, it was bought by the original owner, a guy called Hamby Harambelis, who owned a studio down the road called the Pink Museum. And he needed larger premises. And he recruited Philip Newell, the studio designer who did all the Virgin studios. He recruited Phil, and they basically created this Mediterranean village with a recording studio within it, which opened in 1988, originally called the Pink Museum. And then it operated as a Pink Museum for a number of years. And then ultimately it was sold, I think, in sort of mid-90s to Andy, who couldn't tolerate it being the Pink Museum as a name, I think, and renamed it the Motor Museum, which has existed as ever since.
Which makes more sense with the history to call it the Motor Museum.
Quite, I think, yeah.
It's funny, as soon as you said the sloping floor...
You notice it.
Yeah, well, because Studio One in Sunset Sound was an old mechanics garage.
Okay.
And it has a sloping floor.
Yeah, sure.
And that's because, obviously, the oil would run down.
That's exactly what we have here.
Get out of the way.
Exactly.
But it also means it's really good to stop standing waves, because
Sure.
The floor and the ceilings. But what's great about, of course, is this beautiful ceiling.
Yeah. And what I love about this building a lot is obviously the natural light and the plants and just the environment. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel healthy. It doesn't feel like you're working in a typical recording studio where you feel a bit grey and a bit kind of fatigued. You just feel energized in here, and the skylights at the top open. They're on a remote control thing, so you can hear the birds, and every now and then you can hear the beer garden behind us, which calls dinner time. And it's just a really lovely place to be and spend your days and make music. Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Let's explore.
Love it. Yeah. Show us around. Where would you like to take us first?
In my mind, I always have the walk of intent. And I think it's because you're kind of going up the hill, and I see some of the records I've done, and I know the things that have happened before me here, the records that have been made, and it's a way to kind of calm and center yourself and go, okay, I'm going to go and do something.
I've got to stop you, because
please.
That Sound City,
yeah,
it's like... It's funny because I'm of that age group, that was a £50 used amplifier and nobody wanted it, or they wanted Trace Elliott's and Marshall JCM 800s. And now, of course, that's just like completely collectible.
I absolutely love it as well.
Doesn't sound like anything else.
It doesn't. It's ultra clear and it's hard and it's bright, but not bright in a trebly way. It's just very like immediate. It's just fantastic. It's falling apart. I mean, the cab's kind of, don't sneeze near it, but it sounds fantastic.
I love the look of it. It's incredible.
This kind of run here, to be honest with you, these are all the outcasts. These are the things that don't get used every day.
Then we'll just put it in the car on the way home.
You can have it.
Yeah. Thanks. You heard that, yeah?
A gift. After you.
Thank you very much. Oh, this is great.
So the control room.
Oh, dude, this is beautiful.
This is home.
Wow, you'd never know this existed from the outside.
Exactly. And there's a point of contention because so many of the younger generation of artists and clients that we work with often say, oh, I've been coming up and down Lark Lane for 15 years and I didn't know there was a studio here. And from a commercial sense, that's kind of frustrating because, just come in and see, and you can start your career here and carry on. But I really love the privacy of it. And I love the way that it's kind of hidden and it's like Narnia. You go through that green door and you close it behind and you're in complete privacy. You can't hear the outside world. You're just focused on what you want to do here. And I think it's a really conducive environment for, especially a lot of the kind of guitar music that comes through. There's a lot of peripheral noise around that it's a difficult industry to exist in. And I love that we have this private sanctuary where people can just release all that burden, all the chaos can leave, and they can just be themselves, just make music that's authentic to them, and they can have an experience that is a pleasurable thing and something they can cherish. That's kind of it's the whole ethos of what I want the studio to reflect, really.
Which is great, and honestly, it rings so true as to what was always great about the great studios.
Sure.
That sort of. I would go to these places and the whole world would just shut off.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I loved it so much.
Same. And it's also, the thing I'm really fond of is it's 37 years old now, and it's always been what I would describe as a producer-led studio, where it's had a producer or producers who've kind of molded the studio around themselves, and their philosophy and culture has kind of been absorbed into the walls. And the studio reflects some very iconic and very kind of committed producers' outlook, and I hope that mine as well. So what I love is that it's very unique. It's very focused on what it's supposed to do. The rooms are designed in a certain way. The way the rooms have been modified, the way the layout works, the way that you just find little patch points here and little things there and traces of someone's idea that maybe didn't work out, but they found another idea that was much better. It's a proper working record maker's studio. Very much how I think of things like Sound City. And I've never been, unfortunately, but that romance around Sound City where you go, okay, you can go to the glossy studio and do this, or you've done that a few times, and then when you really want to make something fantastic and you just want to get to work, you go to Sound City, and all the other stuff is stripped away, and it's like there is sound, there is music.
Well, it resonates with me because you've got an SSL and you've got a Chesterfield behind. So
exactly.
wait there. I love it.
Thank you.
Absolutely love it. Oh, and of course, beautiful rugs.
Sure.
It's gorgeous.
It's I don't think I look around at some of the detail in the studio, and I've literally been in the walls, for various repairs, or just to be honest, when the day I bought it, I decided to explore every angle, and so I was kind of in all the crawl spaces, and you see the architecture and the level of joinery that's gone on to make it do what it does, and you go, goodness me, a lot of the best bits of it are kind of hidden behind walls. But when I see modern studios now, I think they're fantastic. They're obviously built with a lot of intelligence, but they're just not built with the same ambition anymore. I think, some of the acoustic treatments and the stonework and just the little features.
I know, it reminds me of Hollywood sound.
Yeah, this is it. Well, wait till I take you through there. But I had a designer come a few years ago to look at some additional work at the bottom of the building, and he looked around and he said, I don't even think the knowledge or the people who know these techniques for building studios like this are around anymore. We wouldn't know where to start to put this together. So it's very much something that needs to be looked after and kind of treasured. So I have control room, obviously, have a machine room at the side for all the kind of the noisy fans. And then the Motor Museum has, I would describe 3 live spaces, but kind of set across 2 rooms.
Yeah.
So I have one large live room, which actually isn't that large really. Volume-wise, it's bigger than it is floor space-wise.
Nice. You can get some good thump.
You can get some good thump. This is a room that...
I'm sure this little tiny microphone isn't picking up, but that's like a
I have some bigger ones to borrow if you need. It's a very pleasant, airy, clear sounding room, this. It's always been the one, that's a room and a half.
So I'm super excited, like a little kid, isn't it?
Go on.
Because I can hear what you can do in here, because the room's great.
This is the normal room.
You've got some stone in there.
Come and see.
So you can mic that up and get some...
Well, this is really what the Motor Museum is known for, this stone room. And this is one of Philip Newell's signatures. Yeah. This is incredible.
Hopefully the little mic. I can't believe this.
Yeah, it was boasted to me that all the stone is imported from Ibiza. I don't know why Ibiza granite was chosen, but it was.
But wait, was this Andy that built this? Or was it the previous?
This was Hamby was the original owner, and Hamby...
He built this?
Well, he recruited Phil Newell to do it. So Phil's a very famous acoustician, studio designer, and there was some interesting stories that Hamby told me. For example, the porthole. So one of the design briefs that Hamby insisted on was natural daylight everywhere. And Phil was great. Phil tolerated that. Phil, allowed every other room has skylights or it has glass. And obviously we all know that glass is not easy to manage in terms of acoustics. So they were building this, and this originally wasn't in the design. And Hamby came quite close to the end of the process and said, I really love everything, Phil, but I'm not happy that the stone room is quite dark. It does work. You just have to give it a good... I mean, it's an original ship's porthole. So Hamby says, it's kind of dark. Can we have some glass? And Phil, no, out of budget. It will ruin the acoustic of the room. I can't do it. And there was a backwards and forwards. And then eventually Phil kind of capitulated and said, if you can find me something sort of like this, by the end of the week, we'll install it for you. Any bigger and it'll ruin the design of the room. And Hamby was like, okay, I'll go for that. So he drove down to the reclamation. Obviously, Liverpool is a port city.
Absolutely.
And there's all over the docks, there's reclamation yards where you can buy things like this, which would come from old ships. So he came back and he presented it to Phil. And Phil was like, well, I did say if it was this big and you've given me that, so let's put it in.
Wow.
Above us,
love it.
There's a huge void above us as well. So what was explained to me is that the volume of the room... It's effectively a drop ceiling, so I think we've got about another third above us in terms of inert space. Yeah. And this is an aperture that allows standing waves and energy to escape up there and effectively be trapped. I believe Electrical Audio and Steve Albini kind of adopted the same thing in his the double height room he has.
Well, the first thing I thought of when I walked in here was Pachyderm.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that's
in Utero. Yeah,
that's exactly the one I was trying to remember the name before.
Yeah. Pachyderm, and of course in Utero was done there with Steve Albini. And with the Neve, I've tracked in there. Right. That was sort of what I was thinking of when I saw the stone.
I mean, the remarkable thing about this room is it's very aggressive. It's big and explosive, but it's not particularly. It doesn't really have a long decay time to it. It's very, very diffuse, which makes it really useful. It's not just like a reverb chamber. It's a really useful rock tracking room. But the low end extension is remarkable. And
again, our poor little mics aren't doing it, but
but when both these rooms, you feel that there's no loss or gain of low end. It's the same level of extension all the way across the room. So if you hit a kick drum, I could stand here and you feel all the low end sub of the kick drum come across the floor at you, and it's the projection of, for example, drums in here is like nothing else I've ever heard.
Absolutely superb. Is there
yeah, there's a pedal, yeah.
Poor little mic. Oh yeah.
Back here, I'm feeling sub.
Yeah.
And the thing about it as well is that it's because it's so diffuse. Even just having 4, 5, 6 people in this room changes the the decay of it quite dramatically. So it's really controllable. You can mold it, you can baffle it a little bit if you want to, or you can leave it wide open like I like.
If only this evening we could track some drums in here.
Well, wouldn't that be lovely?
Wouldn't that be lovely? Stay tuned. Amazing.
And then you come. I think actually the real mystery about this building is this. We call this room the 50p because it's of its shape.
50p piece down here.
50p. Yeah. This is meant to be a dead booth, and you look at it and you go, "How can it be?" And I remember the first day I walked in here, long before I owned it, when I was an engineer. And I looked and I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? Because there's no door to start with. It's quite large. It doesn't look very well damped. How is this going to be a close, isolated thing? And you walk in, and it's pretty remarkable how tight and controlled it is. And if I close the curtains over, you can hit the drums here, and you can be listening on the close mics, and it literally sounds like you're in nowhere. There's no ambience. There's no reflection. It's completely and utterly closed off. And you'll hear, my ears will hear the reflection of the stone room coming back at me to a degree, but the mics don't pick that up at all. And then you walk out into the storeroom and all of a sudden it's big and blown up and bombastic again. So I don't know what kind of magic and wizardry has happened to get this separation without a physical boundary.
People. That's what happens. Smart people.
This is it, smart people.
Yeah, love it. And look at this. Look at the way overhead stands are attached to the walls, so they're not in the way.
Yeah, love that. I get irritated by chores very quickly, so I don't like to have, so I like to make things as economized and as just kind of natural as possible. I want to be able to walk in and within 5 minutes have a drum sound, have a guitar sound, and be ready to go within the first half an hour of being in the building. So a lot of this stuff is this kind of obsessive pursuit of trying to just make this as easy as possible to make records in.
Are these 84s?
They're old 84s, yeah.
Those are old 84s.
Old 84s.
Obviously 421s on the toms.
Yeah, sure.
And if we happen to be doing a drum session, we'll get a more detailed view. But I do have to ask quickly, what is that?
So that is a microphone by this fantastic Australian builder who, his name I forget, I think he might be called Tim, but he has a company called Dr. Alien Smith. And that's his mic, the Alien 8. And that has been a revelation to me. It's 2 headphone drivers. The way it was marketed to me, it's a hybrid of the Bayer MC380, or the Bayer M380, and the AKG D20. So how those 2 used headphone drivers and 2 figure of 8 capsules and things, he's kind of basically rebuilt that. And it's fantastic. It's absolutely a game changer.
And then you've got a biodynamic boundary mic
That's
in there.
right, yeah. And that's all I use. I don't use outside mics. I don't use sub-kick mics anymore. To be honest, the Alien Smith does 90% of everything.
I gotta hear that.
And it's what I love is the face coherency now has never been better because I don't have mics outside. It's just so immediate.
So you've got, what are those, Bayers on the top and bottom?
A Bayer M201 on the bottom, I quite like. Yeah. And this is a Calrec condenser, the 1030C. I've got 2 of them.
Oh, I haven't seen one of these in years. It's like Christmas. Them. This is very BBC. Very BBC. They do love their Calrecs.
They're absolutely fantastic, those mics.
My friend Julian Butcher, turned me on to Calrec years ago. Oh, that's so cool. Oh,
I've got 2 of those, and they both sound slightly different, but they both have this amazing quality of, they kind of sound like KM84s, but they're not quite as bright. They're very robust. They just sound right. They sound right. You put them on a snare drum and you go, that sounds just like a snare drum should sound by the end. 201 on the hi-hat. To be honest, the hi-hat mic for me changes all the time. It's kind of a bit of a...
I've been a dynamic person ever since working with Dave Jordan in the late 90s, because he would take a 57 and a 451 or a 201 and strap them together and then blend. And over the years, working with him, it would be like started here, by the end of it, 57 and a little tiny bit of condenser. Yeah. And I feel like I like the more than
Same. What I've discovered over the years is that the hi-hat is one of those features that really determines the attitude of the drum kit. Mm-hmm. So I'm quite attentive to what the hi-hat is doing. I never bother making rides or anything like that, but I always make the hi-hat, and it's a signature of how.
Not very British of you, is it? We'd always be like kick, snare, and whatever the hi-hat. When I was a kid, whatever bled into the snare was usually enough.
Yeah. Oh no, I have the hi-hat loud, and I really want to hear it because I feel like the right foot and the left hand of a right-handed drummer, that gives you the power. That's the groove and the backbeat, and that's very important. But then, what kind of drummer is on the other side of it is generally the right hand. If it's a hi-hat groove, is on the hi-hat. That tells you what kind of drummer and what kind of mood that drummer is in. Yeah. If it's someone punky and he's battering it, or if it's someone kind of,
Ringo swinging it like this. We're in Liverpool. We have to talk about Ringo, okay?
And this is pretty typical for me. The only other thing I'd say is interesting is I mic the bottom of the floor toms. I never really bother about the underside of the rack, but I guess the floor toms being a bigger diameter drum, bigger volume, it's easier for that low end to sit so low that you don't really doesn't really translate very well. So I like under micing that. I agree. It just helps to kind of.
And you've got a kick mic on that?
Sure, BT52, yeah, which I really like.
Amazing.
And that's literally, there's no crush mics, there's no.
Sure, but you've got this beautiful
mics
room.
On the floor. Exactly, you literally don't need it.
And you've got your Nolly Special.
The Nolly Special, yeah.
Yeah.
I've used that for, 15 years I've owned that for. I haven't used another room mic since.
Driving up here, I got texted from Wes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's
amazing. That's been dropped and that's been re-ribboned quite a few times. It's gotten dropped, it's gotten head-butted and all, it's been through a lot. But it's the easiest mic to use. Room mics in here are literally just a case of walking around with the headphones on and you just roll the stand and you go, it sounds balanced there, and you just stop and leave it, and that's it. And I often like to use this as well. So generally what I'll do is I'll find a great spot for the R44, which has incredible low end and incredible just reach into the room. Really? Find somewhere I really like that, where I get kick snare is really solid and even, and then I'll bring the 88 down on top of it and I'll kind of fly that with it, so that I try and get the capsules as close together as I physically can, and then I'll print them all. I'll find a blend I like and I'll print it to one stereo track, and that's the room mix done.
Well, there's going to be another video, ladies and gentlemen, with drums in it.
Sure.
So we'll get even more detailed. Well, so let's sort of reverse back.
Yeah.
It's been fun to check out the rooms before we stopped and looked at all the gear. I've enjoyed that.
Good.
Oh, wow. So a whole different...
Yeah. This is much more... It's not a dead room. It can be. If we put the rugs out, it gets quite dry quite quickly.
But you track drums in here as well?
I do. I often will track drums here. And this is kind of more traditional studio recording room, which I honestly, I'm not that fascinated about. I love the character. I love the advantage that those rooms give me. It makes me look better quickly. These rooms, you kind of have to work them,
I mean, I think the discussion point now for, a billion years of doing this was, if you're an individual producer and engineer, you can work at home with your 2-input device for 90% of your work. Yeah. But if you want to get a great drum sound,
there you go.
You go to a studio where they have great drum sounds.
This is kind of the business model that this studio enjoys a lot of, is that it's so unique, it's so capable, and it's got myself and Ben and all the friends that are part of the fabric of it. We are always trying to improve it, or always trying to extract some other element of something out of it. It's not so much improving it, but we're always looking for, okay, how do we get room mics to just be that bit more special, a bit more something? I have friends who come in and track drums here. And every few months they'll come and go, oh, you've got something else, or you've done something else, or you've just moved something, or you've just dialed something a little bit more, or I'm just getting something extra from the multi-tracks now. Part of that might be just their familiarity increases, but I also think that it's a reflection of the building and the studio doesn't really have a limit that we're reaching of what it's capable of. I've had studios in the past that I've outgrown. Maybe my techniques or the demands on the work I want to do has outgrown what the studio can offer. And in 11 years, I've never even come close to that with this building.
Well, that's what's interesting, isn't it? I'm looking at this and thinking, well, definitely do a quartet in here, probably bigger still. Mm-hmm. And you can track a whole band in there. You have the drummer in there. Often, still have the guitars, bass, scratch vocal. Yeah. Off you go. You can track a whole band together. Even though it's not a massive room, it's got the sound of a massive room. Yeah. It's got, this is pretty ideal.
I think of it as a kind of a workshop, and I promote this kind of environment to the artists I work with. I tend to work with alternative guitar bands. That's kind of my love, and within that, I like the collaboration of everybody. I always ask everybody in the band to always turn up to the studio, even if no one's scheduled to do something that day. I say, if you're free, if you're willing, come and just be present for the process, because it's good for you, but it's good for me as well to absorb them and making a record that's authentic to those people. Within that, I say, treat the Motor Museum as it's our workshop. Everybody can see each other. The glass and the visual thing and the communication means that everybody is engaged all the time with everything. And we also say, if it gets to a point where you need a breather or you need some perspective to come back, you can go out of any one of these doors into the big wide warehouse, into the kind of tranquil, peaceful environment outside, and you can take a breather and you can just collect your thoughts, and then you can come back into the workshop and you know exactly where you need to go next.
The artwork, was that collected during Andy's time?
This was a previous producer called Mike Crossy, who is an old friend of mine and is an incredible, very talented, committed producer. One of very much my mentors. He had a friend who created these for him. Shockingly, I can't remember his name. I should have researched that so I could tell you. But they're all unique, all hand done, and we'll be here forever.
I'm so nosy.
You're going behind the curtain there, though. That's the room where we've just hidden everything this morning.
Yeah, but that's great.
All the cables and all the stands and all the boring things are just shoved in there today. Can
you stick a vocal in there?
You can. I'm actually going to
bass amp.
Yeah, you can. That floor shares the floor of the control room. So you do find some low end will go. So what the plan is to basically decouple that the raised floor there from the control room floor, which is going to require a little bit of invasive work. And then I'm going to build an ISO cab booth. But it's going to be, ideally it's going to be sprung.
Look at this good old fashioned British studio, all full of biodynamic DT100 headphones.
All the backups, all the really bad sounding ones. But I mean, to be honest,
that's what we grew up on.
Yeah, that's it. I have these projects in mind, about I should put an isolation booth in there. And then you kind of go, yeah, we're going to do it. And then you make a record and you go, why do I need to? Because it works so well. I almost don't want to change what I really love and what works every day.
I understand. Many of us would be spending our lives trying to get to this level. Double miking the 257s is what?
Again,
What's your technique here with the 257s?
So, this was the result of getting. Obviously, the studio is used by quite a lot of people, and I consider it it's my personal studio. But lots of my friends use it. Lots of external clients use it. So. What I always wanted was to be able to walk in and pick up where I left off yesterday. And unfortunately, because it's a commercial room, that's not always feasible. Yeah. So constantly I would go, I found great positions for a number of microphones. I've got many great options next door for guitars. And then I come back on Monday morning and obviously they've been broken down and I've got to find them again. And that got quite frustrating after a while. So I spent an afternoon where I literally ran pink noise through the cab and I would move it around, and it was a labor intensive process, but I would move it a bit, find a good place for 57 and go, okay, that's one sound on a channel in there, that's bright, or that's such and such. And I go, okay, can I find another one? And I just move around, there's another one, and you can see the evidence where I've kind of marked them with a chalk and literally pinned them down now. Same with the 421. I've now got three different colours of them, colours of sound on the console.
But why the 257s?
I don't know. No.
But you blend the two together?
Yeah, I blend all three. Generally, to be perfectly honest with you,
I totally understand the 421 with that.
This is 90% of the sound. This is everything.
Okay, so you're a 421.
I love the 421, and in this particular position, whatever it is about it, this one, I don't know.
Set flat.
You just go. That sounds fine. It sounds not fine. It sounds fantastic. It's big. It's smooth.
So it's on the M setting.
Yeah, and then one of these two is very, very bright. It's all that fizz, all that top end that generally I'm trying to get away from.
So these are different sounding SM57s or just the position?
I'm assuming it's the position, but it could just be the tolerance as well. But when you listen to them on the console, that sounds remarkably different to that. Quite profound, actually. That is very SM57-like. That sounds what you think.
Is this closer to the cone, or it doesn't look like it, does it?
So I think actually there's the dust caps make quite a difference on them. Or the terminal, on the dust caps where the solder point is.
It almost seems like it's in the middle between them.
But there's no science in that. That was just a result of me spending quite...
There is science. There's science of the years.
There's not, no science that I have based it on. It's just purely just going, okay, let's lock one down there. And then this has another different speaker. It's got an old EV12 speaker in it that is disgustingly loud.
Whose cab's this?
It's just a clone of an orange cab. So a friend of mine gave this to me when he couldn't, didn't need it anymore for touring. It's just a birch, very heavily built 4x12. But to be honest, I rarely use that. 99% of my guitar sounds that I go for just come straight from this. This is quite old as well. It's just in great condition.
What drivers or speakers?
These are the original British V30s. So there's the Chinese ones now that I've heard that I don't think sound quite as satisfying. These are the original British-made first run of Mesa Boogie V30s. I just think they're just a bit more balanced. They sound more expensive, to be honest with you, and they work on everything. Everything I use, I never find anything that's beaten it yet, to be honest.
Amazing. Now, vocal mic. It's a Flea 47.
Flea, yeah, which I love. To be honest, I have a 67 as well somewhere on one of the bass amps. To me, I'm jumping between the Flea 47, 67 reissue, or the SM7, which is sounds embarrassing to have gone from value
not
to.
At all.
But the SM7 beats. To be honest with you, the SM7 wins. I'd say at least half the time. The way I describe it, both of those mics are quite different, as you know. But I would describe the 67 as if you want to sound like that person is right in front of you coming out the speakers, or you're in the room with it, the 67 is that. It just sounds so real. The 47, if you want it to sound like a fantastic record, if you want it to sound like a recording of someone, the best recording you got, the 47 does it. So I kind of choose it based really on what kind of presentation you want.
Growing up as a kid and first discovering, the microphones, and I made so many assumptions.
Same.
And to me, my favourite vocal is we're in Liverpool. Hey Jude.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Hey Jude.
Yeah, with the breath and the chest and.
So I assumed it was the 47 or the 48. No, it was actually
really
67.
That mic is so forgiving. That's so forgiving. You cannot go wrong with it. There's no sibilance is not a problem. Proximity effect is not a problem. Even when you overload it, even when you've got it cranked too high.
And that's a Neumann?
That's a Neumann, yes. It's a Neumann reissue.
Right.
You cannot make a bad recording with that microphone. And it always, you come to mix and it just always works. You barely touch it. Actually, the 47 needs more work, I think, to
Really?
I find myself fiddling with that and managing sibilance and managing other things with that more. Whereas the 67, you just go, wow, it sounds fab. No touch. Might
be the characteristic of the Flea. My 47, what I love about it is it takes EQ.
Yeah.
So sure. I was 1953, and so maybe it probably isn't as bright as it should be. I probably need to have it cleaned. But what I love about it is I can just keep boosting the high end on it, and it doesn't get get sibbly.
I mean, that you do have to be careful. I think I've had that now for about 3, maybe 4 years. That's improving with age.
It's like a fine wine.
Well, it kind of is, and I feel a bit humble saying it on camera because I don't know if that's a load of rubbish, if that's a myth.
I have no idea.
But my perception is that the first year or so I had that mic, I was kind of, I wouldn't say underwhelmed, because I did like it at times, but it wasn't the golden ticket that I hoped it would be. The 67 really was. Yeah. That was like, oh, okay, sometimes it's fantastic, other times not so much. And as it's aged and as I've used it more and more, and Ben, my friend Ben, uses it constantly, I feel like now it's more consistent. Every day I listen to it, I go, yeah, actually, it is good every day. Either I've warmed to it or the mic is, I don't know if the tension is relaxing on the diaphragm or something is happening. Right. But that's now more, every day that sounds good, as much as that one does as well.
So we're back in the control room now. And of course, I had to stop and admire this rather beautiful SSL. Where'd you get it from?
I bought this from Pete Townsend.
Never heard of him.
I mean, either one of his 3 back in 2021. And it was
mint.
That's why I bought it from him, because frankly, maintenance would be no problem. You know, there was no kind of scrimping on that. One of quite a few that he had, so I don't think it was used as heavily as it could have been. The console I've always wanted. For a kid, SSLs have always been the ones I've drawn towards. And I did a few sessions on dualities over the years, and I've always come away from them going, wow, that is a great console. It's just 2-channel music. It is the pinnacle of analog consoles that I've found.
How much do you use it to track through?
All of it.
Okay, good. The reason why I asked that, and I know you know where I'm going, being British, is that some of those great records, some of the greatest records ever made of that sort of early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, weren't just mixed on SSLs. They were tracked on SSL.
Sure.
The Townhouse was, And then, are you mixing in a box and monitoring, or you're mixing through console?
I mix through the console exclusively.
Love it.
Don't do nothing in the box. Well, I
feel like I want to high five him. Should I high five him? Nice. Very nice.
In the box is great for special things. So things, sound design and things that...
Details,
exactly, and ideas and flair. But the
great for de-essing and pulling out frequencies with fancy plugins. Problem
solving is great for that. Yeah. But actually I find that when I mix out of the box, there are much fewer problems to solve. They just kind of solve themselves if there are many. And then it's very targeted. I do a lot of... I use lots of design plugins like Shaperbox and Snapback and a lot of the Soundtoys things that they don't, as far as I'm aware, they don't exist in the physical world.
Sure.
But all the kind of the architecture of the mix and everything, how it sounds is the console. And I find
very smooth.
They're all well maintained. I mean, I'm quite fastidious about it, keeping it well maintained. And
it's mint.
I use it every single day, so it has to work perfectly every day. Fortunately, the SSL family, the SSL team are incredible. They look after me really well. I've got a wonderful relationship there. Yeah, they're just really good people, and they care about their pedigree consoles being well used. I think there's quite a sense of satisfaction for them that you go, I've just mixed this record on it, and they go, that's pretty cool. Such and such does another one. I love tracking through it. So I used to have a Neve for 7 or 8 years before it, and I thought that I wanted transformers. I want colour. I want old. I want vintage analog. I want all.
But what series of Neve?
It was an 82, 32.
So it wasn't like the 80 series, kind of 38, 48, 58, 68.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
But it sounded,
which were very coloured.
It sounded, well, this was also, and it sounded tremendous. It sounded, it was analog. It was like thick, a little darker, euphoric.
Can I interrupt you here? Sure. I had an 8058 and absolutely loved it. Yeah. I found that when I was tracking and mixing through it, I was just doing a lot of low end cut, a lot of low mid cut, a lot of...
Yeah. Well, this is what
am I leading you into a...
No, but the Neve I had, the issue it had was that it had a very narrow headroom window, so it was very easy to drive any of the gain stages on it. You could drive them too hard by accident, and it would collapse, or you would oversaturate it, or you would just lose transient very, very quickly. It was almost like a very heavily overbiased tape machine. So you had to be really careful. It took me many years to learn where the sweet spot was. If you underdid it, if you didn't drive the mic amps very hard, it was a bit kind of limp and didn't really have much to give you. And it was wonderful. It was just small. It was only 32 channels. Yeah. It was no automation, no dynamics, very limited in terms of routing. But channel to channel sounded great. And actually that console taught me how to mix properly. It taught me how to say, I don't need parallels. There's not 3 different snare drums. There's a snare drum, there's a kick drum, there is a bass, and there's overheads. And I figured out, I understood balancing. I understood how to carve a mix and learn on that console all the techniques I still use now to keep things very simple and make the most of very little.
Did it have dynamics on the channels?
No dynamics.
I don't know 82s very well.
It literally just had aux ends, mic pre's, and gain. And EQ.
It's interesting. I don't think I've ever used one.
Okay.
Because I know that I've obviously 38s, 48s, 58s, 28s.
Yeah.
I've used all of those.
Yeah.
The 73s, the 81s, the 84s, and then of course the VRs and the V series ones there's still quite a few of those around. Maybe I've used it and I just
I've never worked on a VR, but if you see the VR, you'll recognise a lot of the physical layout and the knob caps and the kind of legending from the 8232 and the 81, which is the Rockfield console, the 81 series.
I know that.
You could see they were the precursor to the VR. They were kind of starting to prototype a different aesthetic.
I think that SSL was so successful at that period. I think they were trying their hardest to be the Neve hybrid SSL.
Yeah, mine was definitely moving in towards being what SSL was used
but without dynamics.
Without dynamics and so it kind of wasn't really doing the SSL job.
So then the natural question is now, you get the console, is it just this liberating thing that suddenly you've got all this dynamics?
Well, it is that. But do you know what I discovered? Is that actually a really hi-fi, really linear, really clean and pristine signal path is so much more valuable to me. I didn't realise how much I was having to compromise for, because my Neve console it had an additional transformer rack. So you could, back when they were manufactured, you could order it with the extra cost transformer option, and it had these enormous big red toroidal transformers hanging off the back of it, which were all the mic inputs, all the line inputs, all the bus outputs, all the aux ends. And we could either patch to the balanced, the FET balanced ones, which sounded fine, or you patch on the transformer option and you go, oh wow, that sounds good. That sounds just more of everything. And I always thought that's what I needed. And then I started working on these, visited a few places with them. I was like, my multitracks sound great. I'm not doing anything profoundly different, but my multitracks just are more effortless. They just sound vivid and bigger, more three-dimensional.
When you did Top 40 Bring Me the Horizon single, didn't you?
Yeah, that was on the Neve.
I was about to say,
that was tracked on the Neve. And then we went to another studio in Santorini, where they had a 9000K. So the whole thing was recorded through the 9000K. I took 1073s and there were some 1073s and 1081s there. So there was some extra Neve mic amps. But everything went via the console and it sounded fantastic. I honestly didn't really notice. I noticed a difference in the rooms and the difference in the aesthetic, the environment we're in. Console-wise, that was the last thing that I was worried about or was focusing on. But then, obviously, intimately using the Duality now for 4 years, and if I was to pull up a multitrack from 5 years ago on the Neve and pull up a multitrack from yesterday on the Duality, hands down, we would all say the Duality multitrack sounds better. It just sounds more real. The other one kind of sounds a bit veiled, and you would obviously have to work hard to cut away low end, to sculpt that low end, to make sure that high end is extended. The Duality just sounds like that to begin with. You just go, it sounds great. What do you want to do?
Are you an EQ into compression
if I need
guy,
to.
like boost the high end, smash it into the compression, get the transients to be exciting?
If I need to, but it kind of already is.
See, I'm a 4000 guy, so
So I had a 4000 for a period as well for about 3 years. It was a small, cut down 4000. Maintenance wise, it wasn't as well looked after as I wish it was. It was very gritty and very grainy, not hi-fi at all. Not really the kind of sound I hoped it would be, but it did have that. But yeah, the way I would describe it is it felt like the console was reaching out and grabbing the sound and holding it like that for you in front of you. And you go, okay, that's exciting.
That's the SSL sound.
There you go.
4000 sound, yeah.
The way I describe the Duality is, and it's a bit abstract, the negative space between the sounds is just as vivid as the space of the sound. So if you imagine you're in outer space and there's no sound, there's no atmosphere at all. That's what the mix bus on the Duality sounds like. And then when you hear a hi-hat, you're like, God, it's there. And I hear the kick drum there and I hear the vocal there. The reason that you can hear the imaging so well is because this empty bit here is completely negative and inert.
So I have a question.
Go on.
Then why do you have the crane sound? Why for monitoring are you not using
Because this was a hangover from the Neve days, because the Neve monitoring section was really bad. It was noisy and it had, the routing was done by a computer and the computer processor lived right next to the monitoring section. So you could hear this kind of, whatever the tone was, this kind of cyclic frequency, which got really irritating after a while. So in the end, we bypassed all the monitoring section on the Neve and I bought the crane song, which when I heard that, it was like, oh my goodness. Now that's clarity and now that's imaging. When the Duality came, I wasn't sure whether to keep the crane song or not. But what I realized is that there are a lot of the engineers here who work in the box, and sometimes sessions will run where they don't even turn the duality on. Or if they turn it on, it's just sat there doing 0. So sometimes it's more convenient for those people to leave the console off, and they just go straight to the Avocet for a practical reason. There's not really any reason to get rid of it because it does a job. The other thing is that it has 6 channels of D to A conversion on it that are immaculate. That sounds so good. 3 digital inputs and 3 analog inputs, and I use all of them for various things. So I'll use the DAW output. I'll have a secondary one to hear the reference mix or the mix I'm trying to beat or whatever it is. I can't find another digital to analog converter that has 6 channels that are pristine as this. So actually, you could take the remote away and just give me the D to A, and I would use the monitoring section on this. But I haven't found a product that does that yet, so it's kind of more convenient.
I mean, to me, it looks like a 4000.
Yeah. And it acts like one. You drive the mic amps. So it's got 2 different mic amps on it. You can have the clean, modern, I think they call it the super analog mic amp, which is a direct descendant of the K and the J, the 9000 series. So it is very clean. It's linear. It's uninteresting in and of itself.
How's the headroom? Because one of the, amazing. I remember when Mark Ender moved from a 4000 to either the J or the K, probably the J first, is he just felt like on the J, he was pulling up his mixes from the 4000 and having to basically bring the gain down. He said it didn't have the headroom. So with the duality?
The duality does. So I've never worked on a K. I've worked on everything else other than the K. Okay. And the J, I remember, you could clip it. You knew when it hit a point of oversaturation, it was very obvious. It wasn't nice. It was nasty. And so you had to manage that. What I was told was that the K was specifically designed to alleviate that. So they specifically redesigned the mix bus on the K, so that wasn't an issue anymore. This is, I don't want to be caught on camera and say this is an identical mix bus to the K, but this is effectively the K's mix bus. Yeah. That's my layman's knowledge of it.
Well, I mean, he had an issue with it from that, and you're telling me they solved it with the K. Well, they obviously wouldn't go back to the issue.
Of course. But yeah, so I mean, it
makes sense.
I've never found a situation yet. I've done probably 1,000 mixes on it by now in the time of owning it. I have never driven the mix bus of the console past the point of satisfaction, but the converters are going absolutely berserk red. So if that tells you anything.
Well, that was the thing with the 4000. Now, not everybody. Bob Clearmountain, when you look at his master bus, it's tapping around on 0. Yeah. It's like beautiful. Yeah. When I mix to my 4000, it's basically the song starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then it finishes.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I love that on my 4000. It was like, it's like self-limiting.
Yeah, sure.
You could smash the schnizzle out of it. Now, obviously, not knowing the duality like you, you've had a 4000 as well. Yeah. The red light in peak indicators, they have to only come on like softly. If they stay on, it sounds spongy.
Yeah.
It loses the pa and starts going sort of. It was not pretty. If a snare just basically goes red, red, it's horrible. Yeah. But if it kind of goes, then you're like, oh, that's a sweet
It's almost
spot.
like when you drive the dynamic section and you get the threshold of the gate just right, and you just hear that little pop snap thing that comes through. That's how I remember it.
What's the sweet spot?
Massive. It's all sweet.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not an ambassador for SSL. I'm just a devoted fan, but it's massive. It's the whole thing is. I've done work on it that's quite intimate, and it does definitely not require driving anything, and it sounds glorious. And then I do my sort of bread and butter is big, large, punchy, guitar stuff. So you do drive things hard, and it sounds glorious. I've never found a place where I'm not satisfied with it, where I go, oh, I should have pushed that multitrack harder or not.
All right, dumb question number 72. Mixing in a box.
Yeah.
With all the fancy plugins, any plugin you want.
Yeah.
Mixing through the console. What to you is the advantage of the console?
Using automation and balancing to mix. That's the whole thing. So the most succinct way I can put it is if I don't feel that things are in the right shape, all I have to do is move faders around, and I've got 48 faders and 8 VCAs, 8 groups. There's no labor in me just pulling a fader down and moving the low end around with the kick drum, the bass guitar, maybe the low end of the guitars, and just kind of remolding them many times within the song, within the chorus. I'll be moving things around and just keeping it held in space.
So tactile. I'm hearing tactile.
I think it's tactile. I think it's that. It's much of it. I think is psychological for me. I think it's that centering of my mind, that moving all the kind of peripheral thought process out the way. I'm not a computer operator anymore. I sit in the center. The computer's off to the side. I don't even see the screen. I have the music in front of me, and I just have physical things that are always in the same place around me, and I just know why I'm there. I know why I'm sat down, what I'm supposed to do, and I know when it's right and when it's not right yet, when it feels great. And it's just, there's so few steps between me making an assessment or a decision and then me being able to correct that decision.
I love that.
I think that's the way I would put it. I can't do that with a mouse, and I can't do it with the screen in front of me where I've got so much visual overstimulation and so many options. It's option anxiety. I find option anxiety is the worst thing for making decisions. Which of the SSL channels do I want? Which of the plugins, sorry, do I want the Waves one? Do I want the Brainworks? Do I want this and the other? Which do I want the SSL one? I don't know.
That's another whole discussion.
There you go. I just want more bottom end on the thing. I just need it to happen now. And with this, I just go like that and it's done. Or not the red one, the hi-hat needs to drive me a bit harder. Well, I tell you what then, just find the hi-hat and just kind of automate that up a little bit. And then it feels really good. Cool. And now it feels not so good. So back down again and then rewind and auto play and whatever. It's so quick. It's so quick and effortless.
Okay. I love all those answers. Then it's not actually the first place I would expect you to go to, although it is part of what I thought you'd go to. Well, because I don't know the duality like I know a 4000.
Yeah.
And we had the 4004. 14 years that console. I just would put a signal down it and it immediately sounded better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is that a part of it? I suppose, what's the characteristic? Is there a characteristic sound?
It's really interesting because obviously I've used it every day for so long now.
Yeah.
I kind of take that for granted. But when I record, I don't monitor through it. So I monitor, I will, all my inputs will go to the console because I can move things around and I can organize things really well. So all the mic inputs, and whether it be from external mic pre's or the console's mics, all go to the console. And then I come off the console's buses into Pro Tools. And I'll try and keep Pro Tools faders flat as much as possible. Pro Tools is literally a tape recorder and a sound design tool for me.
So how are you monitoring?
Through the Avocet. So I come digitally out of Pro Tools on a digital stereo bounce into the Avocet. The reason I like doing that, there's two reasons. There's actually three. The first one is it allows me to move between lots of songs very quickly and always have the balance that I've got kept within Pro Tools multitrack.
Subtle differences between songs are kept.
Exactly. Yeah. And it means that, you can pick up where you left off on a song from, to yesterday, a week ago, or 2 hours ago. Yeah.
Question.
Sure.
But if you're automating in there...
I'm not.
Okay.
So all the automation is on the console. So I don't mix as I go along as well. I try and be as disciplined as possible. And I say how it should be on the multitrack. I best record it that way. So I'll commit things, I'll group things, I'll EQ things if I need to. I'll sum all the kick drum mics together into one track of Pro Tools. I'll print it the way I hope it wants. I anticipate it sounding at the end. Obviously, there is more work to do, but I try and take that approach and be as disciplined.
So you're not mixing as you go?
No. Only if it's to create something special. So if I want to create a long delay or a reverb or a colour, I'll put that in. But if you pick up one of my tracking multitracks, you go, wait, do you need to mix it? And yeah, we do. It always improves with the mix. The focus always, improves. But you hear what I'm doing. You hear why I'm doing it, and I've committed it all.
That makes perfect sense to my brain. Yeah.
The other reason that's why I like also not monitoring through the console, because I can't cheat. Because it would be very easy to have everything spread out on there when you're monitoring and going, oh, wouldn't it be cool to just EQ a bit on the kick drum, and then I'll just add a bit of the channel compressor on the snare, and I'll just gain an advantage. And then before you know it, part of the multitrack is actually held on the monitoring of the console. And if I had to send that multitrack off to someone else to mix, which I hate doing, but if you had to, I want them to go, wow, Al's given me an awesome multitrack here. I best not reduce it. I like that. I like the ownership of that. And I like being able to come back to it and go.
It's very, dare I say, old school.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I grew up. Joe Ciccarelli said to me, in the late 70s when he started, if you're doing like a Zappa record, you might be one of 3 engineers on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he goes, it wasn't like now where it's almost competitive. Then it was like, it's competitive in a different way. You wanted everybody to just bring up the faders at 0, pan them around and go, oh my God, it's done.
It's kind of like...
As opposed to like, well, if I'm not going to mix it.
Well, this is it. No, it's almost like a professional standard that... I remember when I was quite young, with the first experience I had of having a mix I'd rejected, and it went off to somebody much more elegant and much bigger and more established than I was. So I understood why, but I hated that experience because no one could tell me why. It was an A&R or whatever it was, or manager couldn't articulate why they didn't like my mix.
There's a lot of reasons why some of them might not be anything to do with how it sounded.
Well, exactly. But this, I was maybe only 4 or 5, and it's very kind of you to say. But at that time, I was only maybe 4 or 5 years into a career, and I was still learning everything, and I was very sensitive to everything. And had that person have said to me, "We don't like it because we need it to be like this," I would have gone, "Okay, maybe I'll try and deliver that. But if I can't, at least I tried. At least I've had something to aim for." But because I didn't, I took it quite personally and I was quite disheartened by it. And I remember another A&R friend, who was very kind, I relayed that to him, and he said to me, what you should do, Al, mixing is going to take you it takes decades to get good at mixing. Don't focus on that now. Focus on your production. What your strength is right now is how you are with people, how you can produce, and how that's what. So he said, build that first. Mixing will come. So I remember I kind of abandoned mixing. I would do it, but I kind of abandoned any effort in mixing. I thought, I'm just going to be the best producer, the best engineer that I can train myself to be.
That taught you mixing?
That taught me how to mix. And then by doing a lot of mixing, I then realized where my weaknesses were in my engineering and production abilities. So then you kind of, everything kind of pulls the other thing up. So it kind of, very early on, it kind of gave me that sense of, if I have to accept that I don't get to do everything on a song that I really love and care for, someone else is going to have a go. Yeah. I'd like to give that song the dignity of having the best possible chance of being brilliant. That means wherever my job starts and ends, I've got to do the very best I can, because I don't want to send it to someone who maybe doesn't understand what I was being able to do or was trying to achieve, and they kind of turn in a mix and go, this is the best I can give you because Al's given me something that's substandard. I didn't want that. I wanted them to go, actually, I didn't do anything. I just turned the vocal up and the mix is done because the multitrack sounded so finished. That's kind of the philosophy. So it's why I love the console. That's probably another reason. It's why I love monitoring through a two stereo out digital thing, so that it can never be any worse than it is in Pro Tools. I can never cheat. If it doesn't sound great on the multitrack, we'll do something again. Let's take a step back and I'll have another go, or we'll address something. But the amount of times that I interestingly get to the end of the day, do a monitor mix, and it's like, just give us that. It's like, no, let me keep going. And then back to your original question about how does this sound. When I sit down to mix, and I'll take the multitrack and I'll split it out across the console. So I'm very intimate with how the multitrack sounds already because I've crafted it, and I push it on the console and it sounds better again. It just sounds more present. That's the best way I can put it. The console is doing something where it is, that's the best way to describe it. It is just presenting it like real life, like music, not like sound, not like constituent parts of a recording, but just it's physical. You are in front of me as a singer. Like, I can see you. I can see what's behind you when it comes out the console. When it's in the multitrack, in the Pro Tools thing, it's there. If you solo it, you can see the edges, but it's not with me in the room. Whereas when you push the fader up and you go like, oh wow, Warren is like, he's actually stood in front of me. And if I turn him down, Warren steps back. And if I turn him up and compress him a bit, Warren like really reaches out to me. That's the console, in my opinion.
So we talked about the console. Let's talk about your monitoring. Well, I've got two questions. Before we get on to the very, very obvious and very well-loved Genelecs, What the heck are these?
I don't know. These are the original monitors. I've never heard them because they caught fire, I believe. So they're missing the rubber gaskets around here. Oh, God, many years ago, and the reputation of them is that they never sounded great in the first place. They were, I think, an early iteration of one of Philips' designs that never really.
Basically an Augsburger, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody who's ever used them, older than I, has always said, don't even try and repair them. They don't work. They don't translate well. They're incredibly loud. They're just not worth the effort to try and renew them. But they look fantastic, and they're the smiling faces.
They look like C-3PO on the wall, don't they?
They do. And you sit there and you notice them, and it's like the gods of great mixes are just looking favourably upon you.
Okay, cool. And they're called the 235s.
They are. I'm sure that they are one of Philips' designs, but that's all I can tell you.
All right, so let's move on to this lovely system here. I've got to be honest, when we went to Metropolis about 4 or 5 years ago when they first introduced these, super impressed with the
unbelievable
non-sub.
Yep.
What do they call it?
The woofer stand, or the bass extension stand, I think. They have absolutely changed my life. Genelec as a company, I wish I knew about this brand, this generation of monitor 25 years ago.
Didn't exist then. So
they didn't exist. No, and actually, as I said that, I realised I started my career on Genelecs, on the 8040s, the small near fields. For whatever reason, went round the houses for middle part of my career, and many years tried ATCs and PMC and Unity Audio and lots of PSI, fantastic brands.
The Unities as well.
Yeah, I had the first version of the Boulders, the tall ones, and I really liked them. They were really good.
They're good.
They were actually fantastic up until they weren't. It was like an overnight thing. Do you know what? Suddenly I don't trust my speakers anymore. I'm finding that every mix I've done for the last year has this same character that I don't like, this same issue with the top end and the same guessing of the bottom end. And I all of a sudden, it's like the answer is as clear as day. My monitoring needs an overhaul. But that's a scary prospect because at that point...
Was that the media speaker before this?
Yeah, it was the Unity, the Boulder. Like I said, they were great speakers, don't get me wrong. And there was a very different setup. They were on big, hefty stands. They were floating over the meter bridge. It was a very different, setup.
The great John Leckie uses you.
He does. And I do, like I say, I do think they're fantastic. I just think I got to a point, sometimes it's psychological. I got to a point where all of a sudden I was blaming a problem on a particular thing. And it's actually quite a relief. You can say, well, it doesn't matter if that's the problem or not, but at least now I have some clarity of decision to know what to do next. But at that time, I was worried about changing monitors because it's a scary prospect. And when you rely on them so much and you're supposed to not think about them, to then suddenly throw them out and get something new, it's like, well, I've got clients to serve still and I've got expectation and I expect things of myself. So that could be a risk. What am I going to do terrible work for a year while I acclimatize to a new set of speakers? So I very gingerly asked some friends for some advice and some objective recommendation. And Andy Bensley at Genelec was recommended to me, who's the UK business manager. And Andy called me and he said, look, no obligation, no pressure. If you want me to drop some round, you can just hear them and I'll leave them with you for months.
With this as well?
No, these hadn't even been announced yet.
Okay.
They were still in development. So I got these in the slightly smaller set and on stands. And he came in and he looked around and he goes, okay, I know exactly what your problems are. I know exactly what will solve them. And I know exactly what I'm going to leave you with. And he said, if you just leave the room for like an hour, maybe.
Did he leave you with these exact drivers?
Yeah. Well, this is the demo version of these. So it's the 50.
But it was this size?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because I believe he knew that these were coming. Because he said to me that we do a larger size of these as well that will fill the room. I actually preferred the smaller ones at first, but he said my recommendation would either be 51s and a product that's coming later, which turned out to be this, or the 61s and not the product that's coming later. But he said, in my opinion, from what I've heard, the smaller satellite with the woofer stand will be what you want.
So let's do some gear talk. We talked about the console, talked about the speakers.
Sure.
What we got going? Well, the first thing I suppose is jumping out at me is the thermionic culture.
Yeah. I've had that for a long time, the Early Bird.
Don't know that one.
It's a stereo valve preamp. It's just a really, really hi-fi, euphoric, colourful, brilliant preamp.
Sort of hi-fi and colourful, I think would go again.
Colourful in a makes things sound better. Just makes things sound very expensive sense.
Okay.
Glossy.
The one I have, the Culture Vulture, so I'm used to that kind of distort it in all kinds of silly different ways.
Colourful is maybe the wrong word, but a very kind of
No, I like it.
High, expensive type of thing.
Nice.
And then, to be honest, though, I actually haven't used it for a while. I'm all in on the Neve, on the 1073s. Either those or maybe it's just convenience, but the console pre's kind of relying on more and more. But I find I can't really live without 1073s. Kicks, snares, vocals, bass.
Three there,
yeah. I wish there was 33. One day there will be, but I just find them so every day. They sound great. They sound so reliable.
I got a few more questions. So the Fusion, are you using this often?
Every single mix.
So where do you put that on your master bus?
On the master bus, yeah, and I use it just like this. So the Fusion, one of those tools that I didn't know I needed it until I heard it, and then until I figured out how to use it, and now you will pry it out of my cold hands one day. So
you and Charlton Heston.
Yeah. I use the stereo width module. Yeah. I use the transformer and I use the insert in mid-side. So the stereo width, what I'm doing, I turn the space control all the way down, which basically reduces low end from the sides of the mix. So it's an MS processor, this. It reduces all the low end from the sides of the mix. Yeah. And then I turn the width up, which is basically just gain on the side channel of the MS side. I'm turning up the gain on the sides and I'm taking low end out of the sides. And the best way I can describe it is it puts the mix in this kind of V shape. So the low end is central and the sides are much more, well, just less low end, so they're more agile, tighter. Then I use the transformer. I leave that on all the time. It takes a little bit of the very, very, very sub away. It adds a little brightness on the top, and it just adds a very subtle amount of very nice sounding saturation that just gets me there more quickly.
A lot of high EQ.
Oh, this is off. So this is this good, because that would be shocking. This is, I don't know who's been playing with this, but I never touched this side. I have done, but I just like this bit of it. That's for whoever.
Okay. So you're using the MS processing.
I use the MS processing. Yeah. I mean, the cool thing is you can turn each individual module on or off like that. The other really valuable thing for me is I use the insert in MS, and what that allows me to do is insert other pieces of outboard in mid-side. So I use the two Cartecs, which are Pultec clones. And
who are Cartec?
Well, Cartec are deceased now. They're long gone. There was a British manufacturer whose name I forget off the top of my head. For a little while, he was making clones of Pultecs. Really, really good sounding ones. But his company went its separate ways. And I don't think there's many left, but I really like them. They're really unreliable, unfortunately. So, for example, they're not matched. I've had quite a lot of work done inside them to rebuild them, but they sound fantastic and they're worth the sort of maintenance headaches, really. Okay. And what I do, this is a mixed thing, but what I like to do is have the top one as from the mid, the center, and I'm boosting 30 hertz and I'm boosting 12K, and that only applies to the center. And then the right-hand side, I'm attenuating 30 hertz and I'm boosting 5K, and that on the sides only. And that I have that on. I don't even know what the mix sounds like without that. I just have that insert on from the moment I push the faders up, and it lives there. And it just shapes the sound of the console in a way that I find really pleasing.
I've got to hear this.
It's really good. It's really good. When you turn it off, you kind of go, just sounds boring now. Turn it back on. You know, and the separation is wrong. And
who does your mastering?
A guy called Grant Berry in Manchester, who I love. Really, a Grant Berry devotee. Fader Mastering, his company's called.
Nice. All right, I'm excited.
Sure.
Dimension D, or made by
the
Clark
cheap one.
Technics.
Yeah.
How is it?
I've never used a real Dimension D. I've used the Dimension C pedal many times, and it sounds just the same. My only issue with it is it adds level when you turn it on. So you have to compensate for that. But to be honest, for years I've had the H3000, and I use the H3000 on the 231 micro pitch shift, with sometimes a delay. But what I found is that I use it on bass and vocals a lot when I mix. And I was kind of modifying this preset quite a lot to be more effective for vocal work, and it meant that it wasn't so good for low end work. So I bought this to see if I could. A bit of a whim. It's quite cheap. Let's just see if it's any good. Yeah. And I love it. Now this kind of lives on vocals, and this will work on bass more often than not.
Nice.
It's really good. And this is an essential thing for me, really.
Yeah, I use this on mine on vocals as well, but I print them all.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I print different, so I have 3, 6, 9, 12.
Right. Okay. Nice. This has actually started to move now. So every time I turn it on, sometimes it's not 9 cents anymore. I think it needs a battery change or a RAM module change, maybe. This, I used to use this all the time. So this is one of those really cheap pieces of things that you buy on eBay because it's like £40, and you kind of go see if it's any good or not. And for a long, long time, I was using this with a pair of Coles as overheads and using this as a pseudo EQ. So adding a lot of the harmonic top end, and just kind of using it to shape that high end boost that I wanted on the Coles. And it's fantastic for that. But since I've kind of gravitated away from using Coles mics on drums, I don't think I've turned that on or plugged it in for.
Well, it's SPL, so I mean, if it's cheap, it's definitely worth getting.
Yeah, exactly. The Fireworks, beg your pardon, is an old multi-effects box that I have used many years for quite a long time. And lately, I haven't had it on for a while, but it's cool. It does weird things.
The tube driver, the Chandler tube driver.
I use it all the time. I really like that.
Yeah.
I really like that a lot because Eric Valentine showed me how to use it and showed me what he liked it on, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, I must do that then. So I use that quite often. To be honest, Outboard, when I got the console, I sold most of my Outboard. I used to have quite a substantial amount more, and found that as soon as I got the Duality, I was not reaching for any of it, and I was looking at it for about 2 years. I was like, I kind of don't like having money tied up in something that never gets used, and none of the engineers and none of the other guests or friends would use anything either. Yeah. So I was like, well, let's just turn that into something else. So it got exchanged for backline and more drums and other more useful things.
Kick EQ?
Yeah, every day. Kick EQ, kick on the kick group every time.
You look at it and go, that's a kick EQ.
Yeah.
And I can tell you're doing some metal because you're boosting up there.
You'd be surprised.
It's a little bit of
a little. Yeah, I do like the kind of smack that you get from doing that. And then this SE1. So this is a kind of cool old rack mount synth module. I often will do things like on some records I do double bass lines with it. So you have the guitar bass, and then you might want to really extend that low end. Yeah. So I'd use that for quite a lot for that, and I like it because I can turn it by hand. Programming with soft synths is fine, but it's a bit irritating, I find. And if you want to do something quickly or intuitively, I much prefer being able to just reach and do it. And it's all wired into a MIDI controller, so I can spit MIDI out from Pro Tools and it'll light up on there and do its thing. And it's one of those, it doesn't change very often. It's kind of a sound in it that I like, and it's set and forget. Parallel 76s? Yeah, they're amazing. They're old. They're not right. They're not normal. they're definitely not in spec anymore, and they're fantastic because of it. They're both slightly different, so the gain structure on both of them has ended up being slightly different. So you just have to make sure you left and right. So if you use them in stereo, just keep an eye on those. But they are spitty and urgent and exciting. Nice. And they demand to be heard. Very nice indeed. Obligatory pair of Distressors? Boring. So boring. The most boring compressor I think I've ever owned. And I have to own them because I own a studio that other engineers like to use and producers use. So you have to, you need them. But you could take those from me and I wouldn't miss them. I don't think I ever use them. Kick and snare? Yes, kick and snare. Room mic sometimes if I want to play with those. Right. Toms. I've used them on bass quite often as well. As a weird... To bring a tap back in? No, actually the other way, to bring decay in. So weirdly, I found that sometimes you can find bass players where the amount of too dynamic. And the compression maybe is too obvious. If it's maybe it's so dynamic that too much compression is too invasive, and it's maybe the bass line is too complicated to really automate it. You just can't keep up. There's so much going on. So what I started to do was increase the sustain quite a lot, and then you compress it, and it gives the compressor more. It feels like it gives it more to work with, and it's a bit more invisible, but good otherwise.
I remember like late 90s, early 2000s. It was like everybody discovered the transient designer.
Yeah.
And like suddenly every snare was pat, pat, pat.
Yeah, sure. Well, lots of mine are. Yeah, most of mine are. My only issue with the transient designer, and I wish they would change it, it just needs more headroom. It's so easy to clip it, and it's a shame because otherwise it would be, like a desert island piece of equipment.
SDE 2000.
Love that. I use that every day, every time. And it's an old school 80s digital delay line with modulation on it. It's one of many different models that they do, and I've got a bit of a soft spot for that era of stuff. Lots of people say to me, "Why do you bother with? You just use a plugin for delay. Everyone's using plugins. Use Echo Boy or use FabFilter's Timeless, whatever." I say, "Yeah, but I can just reach over here and I can just go bish bosh 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 and push the fader up, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds different.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to sound better or worse. It just sounds different. And I haven't had a sound like that from a plugin really. It's grainy and it sits within guitars. It just disappears within guitars. You don't have to do anything with it. I love it.
And then the stay level.
Vocal, amazing. Incredible on vocal.
For tracking?
For tracking and or mixing, both of them.
Yeah.
That's modded as well, so that has a different output transformer, so the low end is quite extended on that. It is great on bass, but it doesn't really control the bass. So all it does is mean you have to stop another compressor at the other end of it or automate it heavily to get the bass to actually, fall into line. I think that is more of a colour piece of gear than it is a compressor or a limiter. It adds a sound to it, and then you deal with that sound as you like. But it's on vocal, it's unbeatable. It's magic. You don't really know where the knobs are. You don't really know. It doesn't matter how you set it. It doesn't matter how much gain reduction you do. It will just sound fantastic at the other side of it. Big and weighty and lots of authority.
What are you using at the Oral Exciter?
Toms.
Toms.
Okay.
Because I was looking at it, I was seeing the drive on the low end.
Yeah. So I track toms with them in parallel. So I'll actually print them to the track of toms.
Yeah.
So I'll do however many toms I've got. Let's say we have a rack on the floor.
Yeah.
Whether I have top and bottom microphones, whatever, they all come up on the console, and they're all sent to the recording bus, but they also get sent to a parallel bus, which has that on it, all the way up. So loads of low end, loads of top end, all that excitement.
This is going to be fun because we're going to have a drummer come in.
Absolutely. And then the DBX 160s, which are, if people think the Distressors are kind of the essential tool, I think the 160s are the ones that people should get really. I think they're amazing. Mm-hmm. They're so cost effective, but I think they sound better than the Distressor. You can do so much more with them than people realise, and they're just easy. They've got 3 knobs and a button. They're so easy to do.
And then you get like 150
easily. And what I really like what I really like, overdo the output gain. So if you have to obviously attenuate it later, but the output amp will clip in a really satisfying way. It's a little bit like how an SSL channel will clip. An old E series or 4000, it will break up and drive and add a sense of grain to it, and the outputs on those do that as well. If you can find a way to attenuate it later on with the channel or whatnot, they just have a sound. It's a sound. If you go, I want the sound to be sticky and have that, fist hitting something. Yeah, it's in that box.
I think they're fantastic. Yeah, and they're a staple. I don't know a studio I haven't been to that doesn't have a DBX X or an XT. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my Outboard collection is really quite minimal.
It's pretty good.
It's all things that are used every day. It's things that are there for a strong purpose. They need to do lots of jobs. So it's no good having one thing that only does one thing.
What's your snare top compressor?
Channel on the console, if I'm totally frank with you. Yeah,
okay.
There isn't one.
So I was thinking about color, doesn't use.
Yeah.
Color.
Doesn't use. Yeah. 95% is the console now. I just love the SSL channels.
Nice.
Things like the Neve and those things, they are very broad strokes, and that's why they're there. But the rest of it can just go.
Ampeg?
Yeah.
Is this your main bass amp?
It is. It's my pride and joy. That's a reamp box that actually an amazing tech called Mark Burnley makes. Mark is a Merseyside legend. He has looked after studios on Merseyside for about 30 years at least. He is a very close friend, a very wonderful man. And he makes these fantastic contraptions. And you go to any studio within 100 miles of Liverpool and you will find a Reprosonics thing. Reprosonics is his company. And you will find something of his. And you will never find the same thing twice. But you will find some problem task specific solver that Mark has created for somebody. And you will see it in there. And I've got loads of his toys lying around.
Reprosonics. I love the name. So this is your main bass amp?
It's my it's my main one. It's the one, to be honest, once I acquired that, everything else just left and was gradually sold off because it does everything and it sounds so fantastic. It's the Ampeg sound. It's the sound of rock and roll.
Great. Yeah. And you've got your DI if you want the clean. So
Exactly.
God bless it.
Exactly.
Diesel.
It's cool. It's cool. That's a friend's amp. It's on it's been here for about 8 years, so it's very much a long-term loan now. It's just fantastic. It's fab.
Is it your main rhythm sound?
No,
Is it
so I have about 9 amps in this building.
So let's talk amps then.
So amps, I have the Diesel.
Yeah.
The Diesel it's a recorded sound in an amp. So whereas a Mesa Boogie and a Marshall, they're the beginning of the sound, and then you do things to record them and make them fundamentally become the guitar sound in the mix. The Diesel starts like that. So the Diesel, you want to record the Diesel without influencing it in any way. You want to put up a really linear mic in front of it and let it be the sound. That's
what I would think of an Uberschall.
That's exactly what I would describe it as. Yeah,
it's just kind of that wall of guitar.
It's massive. It's humongous.
5150s as well.
Yeah, that's I would say they're very much in the same vein.
Right.
The tritone again. That's a friend of mine has left that here for a long time, and it's kind of part of the fabric. That's a small Dumble. So it's a small Dumble, a clone of a I think it's the ODS. It's a mini version of that. It's a bit of a wild card, that amp, but it's actually very lovely. It's very satisfying to play if you have the right guitar player. But I wouldn't say it's kind of the meat and potatoes. The Bad Cat so that's a Bad Cat Cub, which is a matchless, more or less.
Which is sort of an AC30.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's amazing. That amp just is pure and organic and real.
Lovely.
And then this is so basically the way the amps work is I have a 4-way switcher. So I really love these KHE selectors. So I'll kind of choose at any one phase of life, the 4 that I use every day, they will go in the rack, and then the other ones are kind of the wild cards. So we have the High Watt, which is a new addition. This is Engineer Ben's. This is very classic High Watt, very, very clean, very, very loud, very forward and stiff. Then my 3 personal favourites, this is quite an old Mesa Boogie Rector 50. This isn't one of the common Mesa Boogies at all, so it's not the tread plate. The single and the dual rectifiers have the tread plate on them. It predates that. This is much more raw. This is a fantastic amp. It really is amazing. When people hear the Mesa Boogie sound, especially the kind of the new metal era of it, the Linkin Park era, it's fantastic, but it's Marmite. You either love it or you don't like it. This is much rawer, much more real and ferocious than those. Then the orange OR50, I really love that. That's like, nothing sounds like an orange, other than only an orange sounds like it. It's loose, it's grungy, it's really euphoric and musical while being quite heavy. And then recently, Marshall... Jubilee, that's it. Marshall were very kind to put me on an artist program. There will be more Marshalls coming as I kind of make more space in the building. But the Jubilee is the amp I always wanted. I always wanted a Jubilee growing up. And it's a fantastic amp. To me, if I shut my eyes and go, what is the quintessential Marshall sound? It comes from the Jubilee. It's not really the Plexis and the 800s.
Set at 25?
No, it should be set at 50.
So you leave it at 50?
Oh, yeah, as loud as it... 100, beg your pardon, it's 100 watt. As loud as it goes.
Yeah.
And actually, this is one of the amps where the master volume makes a profound difference. If you have it anywhere less than 10, it's rubbish.
Yeah,
It must be at full all the time. And you have 50 watt, 50 watt, 50 watt, and you go, okay, they're loud. And you go to 100 watt, and you're like, that really is loud. The wall is now moving because it's so loud. But it's amazing. It's just such a fab amp. And what I love about this whole setup is that all of these amps go to this amp selector. All the cabs are on the amp selector as well, and this is always patched in every day, and there's always mics every day in the live room. What I want to be able to do is walk in and go, right, let's do a guitar. You plug the guitar in there, the tuner's hooked up. By the time you've tuned, I'm ready for you, and the sound's there, and we go. It takes me longer to explain how the system works than it does for the system to actually work. And it's, okay, should we have Marshall? Yeah, cool. Bosh. And I'm going, sounds cool. Let me hear the Mesa Boogie. And someone reaches over and pings the Mesa Boogie on. Oh, I like that. So at the start of any tracking day, I'll just set up kind of a palette of sounds that are like this. There's no more crawling around the back. Oh, turn the standby off. Let me plug another one in. Hold on. And I'm like this. Those days are long gone. It's like having 4 channels with about 13 different sounds across the channels of the amps. It's so convenient. And it's also remarkable how similarly they can all sound. And the speaker and the cab makes a bigger difference than people realize. Much bigger difference. Yeah. You can make any one of these sound pretty close, actually. And then the only way you get a difference is you go, I want the vintage 30 Mesa cab, or I want the EV12 cab. And you go, oh, that's where the difference is. So the amps are all kind of in the in a similar-ish ballpark. A lot of it's where how and when they saturate is what I find is a differentiator. This one maintains its low end much better than this one does, but the mid-range of that one is much more progressive than this one. If you want to crank the saturation and you push the mid-range, this you can kind of dial it in more, whereas this is kind of all or nothing, I find. But the low end of this is incredible compared to that, which kind of goes quite quickly. And it's just colours. I like to work very quickly. I like to be very decisive. I like to follow the mood.
So what's your Jubilee then? If these are serving purposes with like fullness and low end and mid range, what's
the
your
Jubilee?
Jubilee
is raucous. The Jubilee is snarl, and it's like
so it's your solo, your lead parts.
Yeah, often, yeah. It's the thing that I lean on this most of all for my own personal preferences and the kind of what I kind of try and infer into the records I make. This is the big sound. This is the one that just fills everything, and it's smooth and it's raw as well, but it's kind of, this is the most valued player on the pitch. Then when I want to overdub and when I want things to cut through and be like, features every now and then, the Jubilee will be the guy usually. It's a thing that it will never be not heard. It will always cut through. It's very articulate as well. So if you've got a player who's really good and actually has some kind of detail in the playing and you want to hear that, the Jubilee will do this. The Mesa Boogie will smooth that out more than you want. It will kind of anonymize a player, which can be very effective. If you want to personify a player, things like the Jubilee, the Marshalls in general, I think really do that.
Wow. What do you got? Are those 192s or HDXs?
They're vintage converters now, I think.
192s?
192s, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Honestly, until they break, my argument is...
I still have 3.
Well, there you go.
I have HDX as well, but I have 3 of these.
Well, so I have a HDX card. I just go off piste and I just hook them up to the 192s because I have 6 of these in the building, so I have loads. When it was time to upgrade to a HDX system, which was 10 years ago, it was a lot of money to throw away perfectly good conversion in the bin. And I was like, well, I'll tell you what I'll do then. If I can make it work, which it does work, it's non-qualified, but it works absolutely fine. I've literally never had a problem in 11 years. When these start to fail, then I will wholesale take them out and put in something newer.
Well, they start to fail, you buy another one for 150.
Or do that, or I go to the store cupboard and I've got 2 spares in the cupboard as well. But my argument is always some of the most fantastic sounding records of all time were made on 888s, which predate this.
Sure.
Many, 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 many fantastic records were made on these. Many will continue to be made on the newer...
Before that was a D24.
Exactly. There you go.
I started on D24s.
This is it. So while they are very reliable and robust... Well,
that's your mix?
That sounds great. And this is the main overdub rig as well.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen is all the multi-track stuff goes on the 192s. Anything that's left off stereo or mono will hit the burl. And actually the burl does sonically add a lot. I didn't want to believe it until I bought it. And I kind of thought, well, conversion's the last thing. It really is minute gains. And I still say that it is, but this, I think the front end of this, the transformer section, you miss it when it's not there. And it's kind of, when you first put it on, it's difficult to hear it. It's difficult to go, it's not night and day until you don't use it and you go, oh, now I see what I'm missing. But you don't necessarily see what it adds in the first instance. And when you build tracks on top of it, cumulatively, that's when it gets really good as well.
Nice. All right, pedals. Yes.
Pedals and things.
Is it a clon?
No, it's a tritone clon.
I wouldn't know the difference.
Exactly. It was a gift I worked with an artist from Singapore who came to me for a few weeks, a couple of years ago, and he had it on his pedal board, and he's friends with the company Tritone who make those. And I remember thinking how fantastic it was, and for a couple of weeks I was like, oh, I really need to get one of those. Could you introduce me so I can order one? And on the last day, he was packing his pedal board and he just, big Velcro, he tore it off and he gave it to me and he said, I want you to keep it.
Oh,
and I've used it loads since. It's fantastic. That's cool. I love that.
Is this the one that you...
Well, no, you wave your foot over it.
That's what I mean, you put your foot over it.
Yeah. So this has it looks for the water in your blood vessels. So you wave your foot over it. What it's detecting is the change in whatever field it has above it from the water content of your foot, in the blood vessels in your foot. I know.
That is scary.
I know.
But yes. Pork line, way huge.
Yeah. The coolest ones on this rack, this is fantastic. The Hudson Broadcaster, that is I think it's a Neve, like a 1073 transformer or similar buried in there, and they overdrive it, and that's how they create the drive from that circuit, something along those lines. But this, I've had that since I was about 15.
The Rat.
And that was an original stock Rat. And when I was a teenager, I discovered a thing about this is how you mod your Rat. This is how you do it. These are the different mods that are documented. So it's like really early days of the internet. And and I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what a resistor was, I knew what a capacitor was, but I didn't know what values they were. I couldn't read the codes, I knew nothing. So, 15 years old, okay, I'll borrow my dad's soldering iron, I opened it up, and I'll snip this, and I'll solder that. And I didn't know what I did, but I liked it. And it transpires many years later, when I looked to see what I did, I broke it. I actually didn't do the right thing, so I don't know what I've done to that rat. So that's kind of one of a kind. The mid-range is the filter is quite different, but I love it. It sounds really good, outstanding on bass. And this as well, I use that all the time.
Microsynth?
The microsynth, I love it on bass. I love the square wave as a distortion. I love playing with the filters. I'll do a lot of things where, whether it be guitars or bass or keyboard sometimes, where I'll get people to play it and I'll mess with the filters as it goes from verse to maybe to pre-chorus and to chorus, and I'll do that trick of kind of opening the filter up and then letting it drop again, and you just make things that you can't really hear them in the track, but you're aware of the value of the lift that they give. And then Earthquaker were really kind to look after me some years ago, so they sent me a whole load of pedals. I'm still waiting to find a use for the Arpanoid, which was one of the ones that it's an arpeggiator.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what it is either. I don't know what it does, but it sounds really cool on paper. And every single session, I get it out and I go, one day we will find a sound for this pedal. And every day, everyone's like, yeah, we'll find it, Al. We play with it, half an hour on it, and every time we go, well, it doesn't really do anything. Next time.
It's a bit like having a sitar.
It's exactly like having a sitar.
I've got a sitar guitar.
It's exactly like that.
And it's a Jerry Jones, so it's a really good one. And we're like, that sounds really cool. And then we listen back to the next day and go,
yeah, why do we do that? That's exactly right. Everything else is kind of...
I'm looking at all your mics.
Yeah.
SM7, D112, RE20s. Oh, ATM45.
Yeah, love that.
People love those on toms.
Yeah, I do. Great on kick. Engineer Ben really enjoys it on kick. I wish you just can't find. They've discontinued them, so I'd like more, but you can't.
Well, no, they still make them, but they only sell them in Japan. So you have to special order them. But you can find them on Reverb as well. I have a pair.
Okay.
We got ours from Japan. I don't know why they stopped importing them. They just did D12.
Yeah, the D12. I had this rebuilt a few years ago. So
you have to tell me who, because ours is broken. And I hear they're very difficult to fix.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will send you his name. It's a chap in the UK, really cool. He repainted, he did everything. He kind of retensioned it, cleaned it. Sounds fab. Then there's
pair of 193s.
Yeah, these are great. I love these. These are very popular on toms. You can tell because they're all kind of chewed. And they're great on overheads. Just very smooth, just lovely and easy to work with. Very forgiving as well. They're kind of like Neumann's version of the 4-on-4 in my opinion. It work every time.
And the 451.
451, yeah, it was my hi-hat micro choice for a while.
Another old school 421 up there.
Yeah, I've got quite a few of these white ones, and they sound very different to the black ones.
Weren't they broadcast if they were white or something? I can't remember what it was. Somebody told me once. Somebody in Germany told me the difference, and I don't remember.
They, to be honest, again, for a long time these were tom mics, so you kind of get the errant stick every now and then. But a lot of the microphones in here, all the good stuff is kind of out on stands already, ready to go at a moment's notice. This is kind of a lot of the
pair of Coles though that you just uncovered.
Well, I haven't used them for a long time actually, and I feel a bit sheepish because they're Coles and they're popular and fantastic, and I've just fallen out of favour with them. But as a studio, it's still really, really popular, and they are essential. Nothing sounds like them. Mine have been re-ribboned so many times because they've been used so often and dropped. And
you got the United FET. They have one of those at Brighton. We ended up using it.
Yeah, it's good. That belongs to Ben. It's I personally, I've never really understood the lure of the FET 47, but I don't do outside kick mics anymore, so maybe that's what I'm missing. But I've never really seen what's so. I think at a time when there was only a certain amount of professional microphones around. Before now, there's a billion clones and a billion different things. It was like it became the bass amp mic. Yeah. Became the outside kick mic. I hear some people say they use them on voiceovers and stuff like that. So when I did the second Fray record, we had only one. Mm-hmm. So I stuck it on the outside kick, and we didn't have a bass player for basic tracking. Okay. The bass player they had in the band was like not a full-time member. We did eventually have a bass player come down, start doing some tracking, and it was nothing special. I think I'd probably DI'd him and gave him a pair of headphones. Nice, yeah.
Near the end of the record, we weren't happy with what he put down. So we flew Dan Rothschild out and he played bass. And he came out with a flip top and his bass. We started tracking like a song with drums and bass together. So I'm sitting there, I've got the FET 47 and I'm like, where does it go? Do I leave it on the kick? Do I put it in front of his bass amp? I don't know. So I was just, so I took it from the kick and put it on the bass amp, got the usual sound up, happy enough on the flip top. Got the $600 kind of Audio Technica. Yeah. The really basic 80
Yeah.
40?
Something like that, yeah. The one that everyone used to say, it was an 8047, I think, 4047 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's a mid-range, mid-price kind of thing. Put it up, pulled it up on fader with the same gain. And said, Ben, hit the kick. And I was like, geez, that sounds so much better.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And,
I know.
And then from then on, I stopped using FET 47s on kicks.
Like I said, I've never owned one. I've used many and I've always been like, it's kind of uninteresting to me. His sound, but Ben really values his. I think really I'm really into ribbons. So
right.
I find I get a lot of value out of good ribbon mics. The R44 I have in there is so valuable on bass guitar, on electric guitar, on drums, on percussion, on all sorts. I like ribbons. I like Neumann condensers. So all the classic, like 67s, 84s, 80. I even like 87s, 47s.
87's great.
Yeah, you can use them on anything and everything, and I do. And then I like 421s. I like Calrec mics. I think I've got quite a specific taste now after so long. Every microphone I choose and I kind of acquire and start my studio with they're kind of there for a reason, because they do a task very, very well. So if I'm not really interested in mics that do everything.
I'm getting in front of you. So this is an interesting thing. So you basically screw them on.
Yeah. So all the assistant engineers here, they know the start point, and I'm not gonna, I probably don't, so I won't embarrass myself, but you get the gist.
It's a great idea, though.
But the idea is that we wanted to, it was a couple of things. From a studio owner's perspective, making sure that gear is looked after, if you catch my drift, it doesn't leave the building when it shouldn't do, is obviously something to maintain. And I have a fantastic studio manager called Sam, who's a gift. And me and him would talk about how do we keep, we want sessions to be really comfortable. We don't want artists to know what happens in the studio. We want the studio to be totally invisible to them and just enjoy the experience. So we kind of put these systems in place where we can almost like automate chores and boring tasks. And one of them was keeping track of where things were, making sure that we knew where our microphones were. If one of us needs to grab something, it only lives in one place. It doesn't find its own home. So we came up with this and labeled everything so that at a moment's notice, the D112 always lives there. If it's not there, it's because it's on the kick drum. If it's not on the kick drum, then we need to log some, that's more of like a studio management thing, to be honest with you. There's a lot of conveniences of, like I say, knowing where everything is all the time, and it's so easy to screw it on, screw it off. The clip always lives with the mic, because it really irritates me when you have a microphone. Oh, where's the clip? And then you have to go through the box looking for the perfect clip for that microphone, otherwise it slides out. The M201 doesn't fit the 57 clip, so it falls out the thing. So this is just a shortcut to being really fast. Really nice. and efficient. And there's loads of these little things around the building. The pedals have it. Every pedal has its home, so that it's really easy to just find what you need. We have a lot of visiting engineers as well. A lot of them we have assistants, brilliant assistants here, but the visiting engineers are usually quite self-sufficient. So they don't want to be waiting for an assistant to do things for them when they're quite happy to go and pick things up themselves and maneuver it around. So it made sense to label everything, and they know where things are. They can reach in and grab things, and it just facilitates an easier working environment, I think.
Lovely. What is what's your little sub kit down there?
So this was I haven't used this for many years, but this was one of the spare drivers from the Unity audio boulders. And one of my issues with the Unities was I kept blowing drivers. And I didn't think I was monitoring particularly loud. I think mine had
Those are expensive, though.
Yeah, well, I managed to persuade them to, when I said, look, there's an issue with my monitors here, can we work something, can you help me with it? Can you support me?
Unities are not cheap speakers.
No, they sent me loads and loads of drivers. Wow. And then eventually took them back. When they went to the factory claimed nothing happened to them, but when they came back, there was no more blown drivers. So they must have done something, because all of a sudden, for 4 years afterwards, there was no blown drivers. So I had a stock of them, and we just, one day, what happens if you do the whole NS10 thing and put it on?
With a very expensive driver.
With a very expensive driver, yeah. Do you know, actually, it's not as good as an NS10 comb, which I do have down here. That's better. That works better for the task.
Right.
That doesn't really do the sub thing, but it's it's there if people want to use it. I always think the more expensive, surely the better. Actually, not the case. Certainly not in speaker drivers. It's not.
Especially not when it comes to creating subs out of very expensive drivers.
Precisely.
I suppose last but no means least, let's have a quick look at the keys here.
I was shocked when I discovered that was brown underneath. I thought they were all white. And that used to belong to OMD and Andy. And Andy painted it white as part of his stage, the stage aesthetic of one of the tours.
This is an OMD keyboard.
It's an OMD original Mini Moog.
Wow.
It's wonderful. It sounds wonderful. It's like, I told you I have the SE1
Did you acquire this with the studio?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I actually quite a lot of vintage synths and things, and I've gradually, it's not really my world, that. So I had an original 808, a few other things. Yeah, they kind of gradually got sold to pay for SSLs and other things. And to be honest, I would never use it. It was an heirloom rather than a tool. And
keep this at least. And did he track with it?
I'm assuming so. It's been on. I mean, I've seen photos with them using it on tours and all sorts. And like I say, I didn't know that they were brown. And the reason that I've discovered it is because we used. Yeah, so underneath they're all brown wood.
Yeah, I know they're brown. I'd never seen one that was white.
Well, neither did I'd never seen one that was brown. And what gave it away was that. We often use it for filtering. So you will you tape a key down, any old key, and it allows you to access the filters.
Oh, and you brought it off and it pulled off the paint.
When I pulled a piece of tape off, it pulled off some of the brown tape. I was like, oh, some of the white paint. I was like, oh no, what have I done? And then as I looked, that's wood, and that's wood effect. And then subsequently, I've seen photos of them, and they go, they start brown, and it's just been painted. But this, I mean, I do that again. The 50%, probably more than half the time, it's the filter section for other instruments that this is great for. Kick drums and bass guitar, electric guitar distortion. I love through it. I do all sorts of mad stuff with it. And this is just a controller to access, for MIDI programming in Pro Tools. And then the Rhodes. I really, really love the Rhodes. I just can't play it. I'm not a keyboard player.
Was this Andy's too?
No, this belonged to a sadly deceased record label owner called Alan Wills, who used to own a record label called Delta Sonic, which is kind of a mid-2000s guitar label that was very much cherished, and Alan did amazing work. Bands like the Coral and the Zootons and a lot of those.
Oh, I know the Zootons.
Yeah, those kind of really, really iconic indie bands of that generation.
Yeah. What's this controller here?
That's a Lexicon 960. So I have a 960 in the rack over there.
That's not an original controller, is it?
Yeah. So you're thinking of, I think maybe you're thinking of the 480. So the 480 had the boxy, blocky one. Then they came out with the 960 later on.
It's amazing.
And I use that all the time. Out of the box reverb.
Wonderful.
Every day.
Amazing.
Every day. Same with PCM90, the PCM90 in the rack that we didn't look at, but...
Oh, do we go past the PCM90?
The PCM90 is...
I have one too, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Past it, here it is.
And the ironic thing is, my favourite patch is the PCM60 emulation in it.
Yeah, it's on there. It's on Room Custom PCM60.
There you go, yeah. And it never leaves that. And every morning I make sure it's on the shortest program, the green program. Yeah. And it's a sound I love. And never move away.
Absolutely amazing. Well, thanks for showing us around.
Thank you so much, Warren. Thank you for coming.
You rock.
As do you. Thank you, man.